I would like to introduce you all to the topic of an annotated bibliography. This is one of the requirements for your research paper. It is a tool that we use in research that goes beyond just collecting sources, and it is a skill that you need to develop for your own benefit as you go into more academic writing. So as I said a moment ago, a bibliography is a record of research. So a basic bibliography is just going to be a listing of all of the sources that you have consulted in any way during your research process, whether you actually use those sources in your paper or not, but anything that helps you gain an understanding of your source, of your topic, sorry. The bibliography would have the full citations in whatever format you're supposed to be using. So in our class we're using MLA format, and we'll look at resources for doing that in another slide. We're going to be creating not just a plain bibliography, but an annotated bibliography. Annotations tell more about the sources than the citations alone do. So a good annotated bibliography will have a summary of the source. It will tell what the main arguments are, what is the point of the source or the purpose of the source, what topics are covered in the source. And if someone came up to you and asked, well, what is this source about, what would you say? So when you write a summary, you're going to be thinking of those questions and trying to answer those questions in your summary. Keep in mind that a summary is not simply one sentence or maybe even two sentences, but a summary is going to take several sentences. Of course, that's going to depend on the length of your source as well. In addition to a summary, you should have a reflection. The reflection is where you consider, well, is this source helpful? You think about how it helps you shape your argument, how you can use this source in your research project, and how it has changed how you understand the topic. So you may have one idea of your topic, and after reading the source, it may bring up a couple of other ideas that you need to consider you hadn't thought of before. So you want to reflect on that. You want to write that down so that when you go to actually write your paper, you have that information already there. So why should we write annotated bibliographies? The correct answer is not because my teacher told me to. No. Writing an annotated bibliography helps us learn more about the topic. In order to write a good annotated bibliography, we have to read more carefully and more critically than even when we're just taking notes, which means we'll have a better understanding overall of the source or the portion of the source that we're looking at. Writing annotated bibliographies helps us see a larger view of the conversation already taking place on the topic. So if you think about all of the different sources that are on your topic, they all have something interesting, something new, something different to say. They may say a lot of the same things, but each one is going to have something different that it adds. And if we look at the sources kind of in isolation, we don't really get that whole picture. And once we get that whole picture, we learn more about our topic. We see how the different ideas fit together, how they challenge one another. We're able to form our own thesis, our own main idea for our paper that is debatable or discussable, since we're not necessarily writing an argument, something that's interesting and current. We're not just repeating the same old, but we're finding something that we can add that's different. So what should an annotated bibliography look like? We'll look at an example soon, but just to give you the basics, you're going to have a complete MLA citation of the work, and if you were to click on this link, it would take you to the Purdue OWL site that teaches you all about MLA citations. You would align the first line of your citation would be all the way to the left, and then any other lines of a citation are going to be indented. So kind of the opposite of the way you normally write a paragraph. Then your annotations would come after the citation. So you'll have the source citation, then the annotation for that source. The annotations are written in paragraph form. They're not question and answer form, they're not bullet point, but they're written as paragraphs. So you would have a summary paragraph and a reflection paragraph. They would be lined up with this second line of the citation. So if we look at these boxes, we can say this box is the first line in the citation, this box is the second line in the citation, and this box is where the annotation starts. So these would be lined up and this would be hanging off to the left. Again, we'll look at an example momentarily. Everything on your bibliography is double spaced. Everything. The font, I prefer Arial to Times New Roman, so I'm going to ask you to use Arial size 12. Don't go any smaller than 12, don't go any bigger than 12. The size is 12. Since most of the Word and Pages, and I think even Google Docs these days, defaults to size 11, make sure you change it to size 12. And you will have one entry for each of the sources that you consult. Your project asks you for a minimum of 5 sources, so you should have a minimum of 5 entries. Right. So these links here will take you to Purdue OWL's site, where you can look at the information about annotated bibliographies. And basically this presentation has condensed this information into bullet point format and made it a little more specific for our assignment. This one takes you to a breakdown of the annotated bibliography. So these, you get like the topic that's taking place, you get a citation, you can see how the second line is indented, and then it gives you information about what the citation, or what the annotations would cover and look like. And then here's another citation, and it gives you some annotation information, and another citation and more annotation information. Notice that these citations are in alphabetical order. H comes before S and S comes before W, so you need to make sure they're in alphabetical order on your page as well. And then here are some samples. So what we have here, the only one you really need to look at is this one, the sample MLA annotation. So we have Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird. So here we have the author with last name, comma, first name, period. We have the title of the book, Bird by Bird, Some Instructions on Writing and Life, and a period. And then we have the publisher, Anchor Books, comma, and the date of publication, 1995, and it ends with a period. This is an actual physical book, so you don't have a URL or any electronic book information. By the way, this is a really good book for writing, and we may do some exercises based on sections from this book. And then we have the annotations here. We have 2 paragraphs, and we have one paragraph that summarizes. Oh, we have 3 paragraphs on this one, sorry. We have one paragraph that summarizes. We have one paragraph that's an evaluation of the text itself. I'm not asking you to do that for this annotated bibliography, but you may be asked to do that in a future one. And then you have the reflection paragraph right there as their last one. And you do not need to worry about the APA one at all. So here's another easy link to the MLA Formatting and Style Guide. That is the same link that is here. This takes you to the MLA Formatting and Style Guide. And notice that it's not just this page. This is only the beginning of the style guide. You have all of this, all the way down to the changes that have been made since the previous edition. You don't need to necessarily look at some of this stuff, but when you're trying to do your citations for your Works Cited page, those will be the same kind of citations that you're using for your annotated bibliography. And so here's an overview of the process that you would use. You would first list the author, last name, comma, first name, period, the title of the source, followed by a period, the title of the container. So if this source happens to be a newspaper article, you would have the newspaper article title, and then the container would be the name of the newspaper itself. If you have any other contributors other than the author, those who are like illustrators or translators or things like that, editors, you might put those there. If there's a version and a number, that applies to a lot of magazines and academic journals. Pretty much everything you consult should have a publisher in some form or another and a publication date. And then this location would be if you have page numbers or if you have a URL for an online source, you would put that in this location. And then they give you some samples of different kinds of citations, and they point out the different parts of them. So here's what the author part looks like. Here's the title of the source. And different kinds of sources have different ways of punctuating or italicizing. And then here's an article in another publication, so you can see how that looks and all kinds of different things in here. So that's something you'll want to look at on your own. There's also an MLA section in our textbook that you could look at as well. So if you have any questions, of course you can contact me, but otherwise I think this should be enough to have you put together your own annotated bibliographies.